Now, that having been said, right, I think that taking unnecessary risk by using potentially unproven flight hardware or unproven launch providers is adding just additional volatility and additional uncertainty into the mix. I think space is hard, right? And so there's so much already that you can't control for. Why add more? And I think this all goes back to my grand thesis of space economics as a whole, which is, space has a money problem. There really isn't a whole lot of capital. It's a very closed off economy, right? Because there's only really two sources of additional new funding. It's limited equity investment, both on the private side as well as some limited public markets participation, and then there's government funding, which is capricious and forever beholden to power the powers that be. And so because of that, what I've noted, and this was what sort of actually led to the original insight that got me starting shorter. Everybody is cash strapped. Everybody makes decisions with the assumption that there may not be more capital on the way, right? And so that then leads to what I call a proliferation of short-term thinking, right? Because we are, and that's it's difficult not to fall into that cognitive trap, right? I want to know where I don't have a guarantee that I'm going to be able to raise my next round, or I don't have a guarantee that this next contract will hit. And so, it's kind of like, I gotta make sure that I can stretch my dollar as far as possible. But then what that leads to is, we procure, automotive grade components where we really shouldn't, right? We skip testing where we really shouldn't. We, design for cost efficiency rather than reliability. And then reliability means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, right? Like, I'm not saying that you over engineer things, because that's obviously also not an ideal outcome. But I do think that there is a lot of thinking. There is a proliferation of short-term thinking in the space industry, especially when it comes to technical decisions, wherein we optimize for potentially the wrong thing, or we optimize for cost when we really shouldn't.
Right, because we got this very evil pyramid, fast, cheap, or good, and
the
industry tends to focus on fast and cheap. Unless you're NASA, then it's good, and we don't care what the price tag is, right? And we don't care how fast it goes, right? So. No, it's a definite constraint, and we made the decision, right? Do I like it? No. Would I choose a different path? Yes. Do I have enough money in the checking account to make the luxury choice that I want? Absolutely not. So
so that's my point, right? Like, I think there's a misalignment in incentives between capital providers and innovators and companies, and it's mostly because everybody has a different set of incentives, right? If you look at what venture capital requires, right, which is, generally speaking, it's a 10-year fund life cycle, and so they need to see a payout within a certain amount of time. It's just not necessarily very patient, and so because of that lack of patience, you then optimize towards speed, and if you can't get it fast and good, you got to go cheap and fast, and so then you end up with more failures than you would otherwise have had to take on. One of our underwriting partners actually put it really, really well. Over the course of his 20-something year career in space insurance, he has had to pay out hundreds of millions of dollars worth in claims over hundreds of dollars worth of parts and components. It's painful, right? But and you think about it, it is rough. But that's why we need a realignment of new sources of capital that are patient, that have different incentives, that are able and willing to go the distance, not because going the distance is not because they're nice about it, but because going the distance is objectively the correct way of approaching these problems. And it's there's this old axiom from the military, right? Like, slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
Right. Yep.